This is a mini help video to go through the topic of indices. So the first question says, circle the correct answer to each of the following statements. 9 to the power of minus a half. Now there's two things that this is looking for you to realise, okay? So this 9 to the power of minus a half, we need to know that if we have any number to the power of minus, the minus bit, let me just use a highlighter for this as well. The minus bit here, that just means 1 over. Okay, so then the 9 to the half would remain. Okay, that's what the minus bit means. It just means 9 to the means 1 over 9 to the power of that normal thing without the minus sign. The next thing that you need to know is that the power of a half means something as well. The power of a half is the opposite to squaring. So we do 1 over the square root of 9. So then we're going to do 1 over the square root of 9, which is 3, so we're looking for 1/3. So we're just going to circle that answer there. The next one we've got then says 8 to the power of 2/3. So the main important bit here is not the 2 necessarily. It is important, but the most important bit is the denominator of the fraction. Rather like when we had a half, we looked at saying, well, it's the 2 is square rooting. Then when we look at the denominator of a 3, that means we're cube rooting, so it's going to be the cube root of 8, and once I've answered that, I'll then square it. So I'm thinking of my cube numbers. 1 times 1 is 1 times by 1 again is still 1. 2 times 2 is 4, then times that by 2 is 8. 3 times 3 is 9, times that by 3 is 27, and so on, okay? I'd recommend that you know your cube numbers up to 343, which is the 7th cube number, okay? So they're your first 7. You're unlikely to get asked any higher than that on a non-calculator exam. So then we're going to do 4 squared, and 4 squared is 16, so hopefully that is one of my answers then. Oh, hang on, I'm being really silly. It's not 16, and the good news was it wasn't one of the options there. The cube root of 8, is 2, so this should have been 2 squared, and 2 squared is indeed 4, so it's that one there. Coming into the next one here, it says circle the correct answer to each of the following. So we've got 9 to the power of 3 over 2, so it's not the same as the one that we just did. The over 2 tells you it's the square root of 9, and once I have that answer, I will then cube it. The square root of 9 is 3, and now I need to do 3 cubed. I already have it in my list from here above, but it means 3 times 3, 9, times that by 3, 27. Okay? Now this one here could come up in a non-calculator exam, and it looks horrendous, and it's got the same idea that it's got a minus bit there, so we know it's got to be 1 over. So it's got to be 1 over. Now to the quarter means to the 4th root of 10,000. Okay, so that's going to be what goes in there. And if this came up on a non-calculator exam, there's only going to be certain numbers this can be. So don't necessarily think, oh God, I can't do this question. Because actually, if you just boil it down, we can automatically then go and say, well, it can't be that and can't be that because they're not 1 overs. So then it could be any of these ones here. So we're looking for a number times by itself would be a square number, then times by itself again would be a cube number, then times by itself again would be a 4th root. Now if it's got all these zeros, I'm pretty sure it's going to be this number here. 10 times 10 times 10. So let's just double check. 10 times 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Oh, look at that. I'm absolutely right, okay? So this answer would be 1 over 10 because it's that number times by itself 4 times that makes it. So it's this answer here. Okay? Next page. It says circle the correct for the following. So 3 cubed, we already know is 27. Incorrect. 9 cubed is 9 times 9, which is 81. And then 81 times 9, which is clearly not going to be 9 cubed. 94 is going to be even bigger. 18 squared is 18 times 18. I would expect you to actually know that. 18 times 18. So I always go to ones that I know to begin with. So 15 squared is 225. And then 16 squared, I said I'd expect you to know that. I certainly expect you to be able to work it out. So 10 and 8, 10 and 8, or a different method if that's what you're familiar with. 64, 80 and 80 here, and then 64 here. Well, that's clearly not going to be 81, that's going to be too big. So again, I can mark that out. So it must be 3 to the power of 4 by definition. And if we just double check that, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is what it means. What is 3 times 3? 9. What is 3 times 3? Also 9. We times them, that is 81. Okay? 2.1 to the power of 5. Now again, I'd be looking at that and saying, let's get rid of some of the numbers we know it can't be. So 2.1 to the power of 5 means 2.1 times by 2.1 times by 2.1 times by 2.1 times by 2.1. Okay, there's 5 of them. Well, obviously I'm not going to try and work that out without a calculator, and this came up in a non-calculated test. If we just go and estimate straight away, we could hopefully get rid of some of the answers here. 2.1, so 2 times 2 is 4, times by 2 again is 8, times by 2 again is 16, is 32. Can't be anything less than 32. Okay, so it can't be that. It can't be that one either. So it starts bringing us down into these. Now, if I was to do something like, let's just go to an easy-ish one that I can work with. If I said, what is 2.1 squared, hopefully we'd know that's 1.44. Okay? Now you can see that as I start to times, I'm getting all these decimals here. Now these ones here don't have those decimals, so if I had to put my money on it, I would say it's that one there. Okay? Obviously you can check that in the calculator and see if that's the right answer. Okay then, so we're now coming into this final one here. Now again, that half means square rooted, so the square root of 12.96. Now I don't know my square numbers to that level of number here, but what I do know is that the square root of 9, which is the square number that precedes it, is 3, and the square root of 16 is 4. So it's got to be somewhere between 3 and 4, so we can get rid of that one, that one, that one straight away. So it's between these two here. Now, if I had to look at it, I would say, well, it's 12.96 is bang in the middle of 9 and 16. It's much more in the middle than 3.3 is. However, rather than just circling it, let me just double check. So 3.3, I'm just going to split my numbers up into 3 and 0.3, 3 and 0.3. 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 0.3 is 0.9, 3 times 0.3 is also 0.9, and then this is 0.09, so that's 1.8, so this is going to be 10.89 once I add all of those together. So I was right in my conclusion, it can't be that, so by process of elimination it must have been that one there. Okay, hopefully a little bit easier now, these ones, okay? So we'll need to simplify these to their absolute simplest form. So we know that minus means 1 over and 0.8 to the power of 1. Well, that is just 1 over 0.8. Anything to the power of 1 is itself, but we can't have a decimal within a fraction. So the easiest way to do this is probably just to times top and bottom initially by 10. So that's 10 over 8. And then I can say, well, that must be 5 over 4 by the time I'm finished, okay? Now again, we've got that quarter. That means it's a 4th root, which initially looks really, really hard, but it won't be hard. They're only going to give us certain numbers. It ends in 25, so if I had to guess, I think 5 is going to be involved. So let's start working out with 5. So 5 squared is 25, times that by 5 would be 125, and then times that by 5 again would indeed be 625, so the answer is 5. Okay? This one to the 2/3, we need to do the denominator being 3, we need to do the cube root, and we just do them separately, the numerator and the denominator. And then the cube root of 64, and then we square each of those answers. So the cube root of 1 is 1, 1 squared is still 1. The cube root of 64 is 4, and then 4 squared is going to be 16, so the answer is 1 over 16. This one here, it says write 81 times by 3 to the power of 0 times by 27 squared as a power of 3. Well, they're giving you a big hint here that you're going to be wanting to change everything to powers of 3, but even if they didn't, always have a look at the smallest number and see if that they go into these numbers here. So I know that 3, to make 81 would be 3 to the power of 4, purely because it's come up in this video so many times. However, you just go through and work out how to work out what that is, okay? So that's why I can change that to that. I then times that by 3 to the power of 0, that already is as a power of 3, and then 27 squared, so I'm going to change the 27 into a power of 3, so that's going to be 3 cubed, okay? And to simplify that, this is going to be 3 to the power of 4 times by 3 to the power of 0 all over 3 cubed times by itself would be 3 cubed, so that would be 3 to the power of 6, so then that would give me 3 to the power of minus 2 overall, okay? Now, because it wanted it as a power of 3, I just leave it as that. Maybe make sure it does look like a 3. You could have written that as 1 over 3 squared, which is 9, but they're not asking for that. They want it to be as a power of 3. Part C says 5ab to the power of 4 cubed, and then all divided by a squared. So what I would do in this situation is just write out that one there, cubed, because it's very easy to go wrong on this because you've got numbers and indices. So we've got here, that's what that means, Sorry, that should say b there. And then a squared there. The numbers are going to deal with the numbers. 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. A times A times A is A cubed. And then b times b to the power of 4 times b to the power of 4 times b to the power of 4 would be b to the power of 12. All over a squared. I can only deal with the a's here. So dividing top and bottom by a squared, I get 125. A to the power of 1, effectively I'm just subtracting the 2 off the 3, but I'm going to leave the a just as a, but I could put in 1 if I wanted to there. B to the power of 12. Okay. And then have I got any more? Looks like I do. Okay, got a bit of a fussy one here, question 5. So we've got minus 3 is the power. So that means it's 1 over. That's what the minus bit means. We've looked at that already previously. And then it's 1/5. And then each of those would be cubed. We dealt with the minus by doing the 1 over. And we end up getting 1 over 1 over 125. But we've got a big issue here. We cannot have a fraction within a fraction. So I need to times the bottom by 125, which means I need to times the top by 125, which means we then get 1 times 125, which is 125, and then those two there cancelling out over 1, so the answer is just 125. We've got a quarter again coming up, making an appearance. That means the 4th root of 256, and then once I've got that answer, I'm going to cube it. Well, I've got absolutely no idea what number does that. The last one we've seen so far today is 3 times 3 times 3, which was 81. So, oh, and also we've looked at 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, which is 625. Well, logically then it's going to be 4, isn't it? But let's just go and prove it. 4 times 4 is 16, times by 4 times 4, which is 16. 16 times 16 is indeed 256. So the 4th root of 256 is 4, because that's the number that you times by itself 4 times and it makes that number. And then I cube that answer. 4 times 4 is 16, and then times by 4 again to make it cubed would be 64. Okay? And then finally, it says here, estimate a value of 50 to the power of a half. Well, think of your square numbers, so let's go through them. 1, 4, 9, 16, 24, being really slow here, 25, sorry, 36, 49, 64. I'm going to stop there because I'm looking at 50. Well, obviously 50 is unbelievably close to 49. As it wants an estimate, I'm just going to say the square root of 49 equals 7. Therefore, the square root of 50 would be equal to 7 as an estimate. Okay? Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that useful.